In a world of cloud, AI, automation, DevOps, I've been wondering, do our traditional approaches of doing wireless design and survey, where we send an engineer on site to take RF measurements, is that getting a little bit out of date? And is there a better approach? Are there any better approaches? Well, I'm here at WLPC Prague with Jussi. Hey, Jussi.
Hey, Peter. Nice to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. You've got a very strong integration with Juniper.
Correct.
And the MITS dashboard. What are some of the benefits then of being able to integrate a wireless design survey tool with a wireless infrastructure vendor? Why do I want to do that?
That's a good point. So we kind of started with the automatic deployment, and now some others are starting to follow lead as well. But I think the big deal comes from like truck rolls cost so much money, and I think a site survey, that's always a truck roll automatically these days. Validation site surveys, I think, are really good in many locations to kind of understand how the network looks like from the client perspective, especially if you have these non-carpeted spaces where most of the walls are maybe not floor to ceiling, but you have warehouses, factories, things like that. I would always do a validation survey to understand kind of how it looks like from the client perspective. Or if you have any kind of critical environment like hospital, you definitely want to make sure that the network works friggin' everywhere. But if you look at things like corporate offices, branch offices, these kind of sites, for example, maybe there's some other ways, especially because the Wi-Fi systems today are so smart, and we can pull that RF data from those Wi-Fi systems back into the Wi-Fi design tools. Maybe there's some ways there. So we've kind of brought in things like live network RF analysis without having to go on site. This, for example, we co-developed with MIST and launched at the previous MFD. But essentially, what that means is all the access points are listening to all the other access points all the time, and then that data can be fed. It's like a humongous matrix of how every access point hears every other access point, the signal strength readings, everything. We can take all of that matrix and then combine that with our kind of propagation engine and the 3D stuff, whatever we do, and then lay down fairly accurate heat maps without ever having to do a survey. So we had a customer a few weeks ago, for example, who had like 300 sites, some of them more complex, let's say 50 were more complex, but the 250 of the sites were actually not very complex, and they were floor to ceiling walls and not too big and not too critical. So they ended up surveying just those 50 sites and doing our what's called our automatic environment modeling for the 250 sites. So they just remotely, once they had set up the network, remotely they checked the heat maps and like, yeah, looks great. There's no question that this will work. We don't need to send a person on site. So essentially, site surveys traditionally are about heat mapping. Now we can construct those heat maps based on how every access point hears every other access point.
Brilliant. So I wonder, could we see some of these integration?
I'm glad you asked, and just consequently, like completely, out of the blue appears a laptop that happened to stand here, and let's take a quick look at that. So, the traditional network planning, that's here, right? And all of the Juniper APs, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7, whatnot, and kind of we just brought real timeness to the network planning, but this is old news. So this is actually when I move to the survey tab, now this is actual measured site survey data, right?
Yeah, so that is where we've sent an engineer
exactly
on site, they've gone around, they've done the survey, and they've got some measured data.
Exactly right.
So it's very much our two traditional approaches then for doing survey.
Yep.
And then so from that then we can take that data, and what we can do is we can export that, can we, into Juniper Mist?
We can do even better. So if I click live, we actually get that kind of like similar heat map as we saw in the survey. Let's take a look at it from top down. And this is now the network in its running state right now. Actually not when we surveyed it, not when we designed it. It's right now.
So that is right now.
Right now.
Exactly as it's operating right now.
Absolutely.
Now, that's amazing. So actually, if you've got that integration, and you want to do what I would class as, I normally call them an assessment survey.
Yep.
So a customers, maybe their requirements might have changed from when the network was installed, and they've actually to go in and maybe go, does our network meet our current requirements, not the requirements of when we installed it? That would traditionally mean I'm going on site, I'm walking around, I'm taking some RF measurements. What you showed is a survey data, but what you're saying now is I could have a API connection to the Mist cloud, and I can actually go without sending an engineer on site. What does it actually look like today?
Exactly right. And whenever I go to live, it's updated. So and you can see environment learning model updated, and that's where all the APs heard all the APs. We took that data and we calibrated what's called a prediction model. And now this, because it's live, I of course cannot move the radios, because this live status comes from the Mist dashboard. So you have your access points on the dashboard, you have everything here. This is the source of truth, right? This is what, where you have the most up-to-date information whenever you do anything. And if you want to move the APs, if you want to add APs, things like that, you can do them either in Hamina and then export the changes to Mist, or you can control it in Mist. But Mist is always the source of truth for us. This is the same exact site. But Hamina just gives a visual layer on top of it.
So just to come back to my original question then, there's sort of traditional survey and design methodology where we go on site, we take RF measurements. Is that going away? Are we moving to a point where we don't need to do that anymore? What's your thoughts?
I don't think it's a black and white answer. I think site surveys will always be necessary, because that's the only way we can understand client level RF environment. Yeah. It's not for, after these kind of changes, it's not necessary maybe for all the environments, but for critical and quirky, not floor to ceiling, not carpeted space environments, I think it still very much has its place. However, truck rolls, all of that, even the thought of doing a survey every time you troubleshoot, I've always found it a bit quirky, but now it's completely eliminated.
Right. It is a bit quirky, and we're still going to have to survey for new deployments, aren't we? There's not a wireless network there.
Exactly right.
You're still going to be having to go out and take some measurements on site and visit the site and stuff
and
like
even
that.
AP on a stick
has
its value.
Attenuation measurements. Just where do I place APs? You need to be on site sometimes too.
Absolutely.
But I think once a network's deployed, I think this is going to provide a great benefit to the user. And I think it's really great to see, it's great to see Juniper, it's great to see Hamina working together to actually make all of this possible. So congratulations to both.
Thank you.